The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Say it louder so your other eye can hear you.
Drama pieces going on between Jenna Ortega and the Walt Disney Company. Disney's been trying to desperately get her on board.
She's now bragging about the success of Snow White, which is a movie that's going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars, and mainly because of her and because nobody wanted to support her.
When I did television shows when I was younger, they would take us to media training, or they would call it, Disney 101 or something like that, where you would go and they would give you a notebook and pens and pencils and paper, and they would say, okay, you're gonna post 3 times a day.
Yeah, we had more dwarfs than we did viewers in most of these theaters. And as you know, there were no dwarfs other than some CGI weird generated version of them. It's the old, it truly is go woke, go broke.
This was Jenna's main reasoning of deciding to back out of the project and created serious creative differences between herself.
Imagine a Disney star handpicked for a princess role once hailed as the future of fairy tale magic. Now picture that same star facing a Hollywood cold shoulder, whispers of blacklisting, and a career hanging precariously in the balance. This is the story of Rachel Zegler and the Snow White controversy that sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. The internet exploded, not with fairy tale dreams, but with accusations, rumors, and a dramatic recasting that left everyone wondering what really happened behind the scenes of Disney's Snow White, and how did Rachel Zegler seemingly go from golden girl to persona non grata overnight? Prepare for a tale of ambition, backlash, and the brutal realities of Hollywood, because this is a story far darker than any enchanted forest.
Don't alienate half of the country when you're putting out a product meant to appeal to all. It's the Michael Jordan Republicans buy sneakers too.
Just a few short years ago, Rachel Zegler's trajectory was the quintessential Hollywood Cinderella story, a narrative of meteoric rise that captivated the industry. Catapulting onto the global stage with her breakout, critically acclaimed performance in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, she wasn't just recognized as a promising newcomer, she was immediately championed as a vibrant, exceptionally talented force. The industry buzzed with anticipation for her next move, and then came the announcement that ignited fan fervor across the globe. Rachel Zegler was chosen to don the iconic mantle of Snow White in Disney's ambitious live-action reimagining of the timeless fairy tale. It felt like a destiny fulfilled, the perfect alignment of actress and role, a dream realized for a star rapidly ascending. Headlines worldwide celebrated her casting, not only acknowledging her undeniable talent, but also applauding Disney's apparent commitment to inclusive representation and a forward-thinking contemporary vision for a classic narrative. The initial wave of public sentiment was overwhelmingly positive, a symphony of excitement and anticipation. Yet, unbeknownst to the cheering crowds and the celebratory press, behind the meticulously curated fairy tale announcement and concealed beneath the dazzling smiles captured on red carpets, subtle yet significant seeds of discord were quietly, insidiously being sown. The carefully constructed magic was about to dissipate, the vibrant dream on the verge of transforming into something unsettlingly close to a cinematic nightmare.
Every one of the 18 hours I am in the Snow White dress, I expect to get paid. If it's 18 hours, I want 18 hours of pay. I'm sure she got underpaid as a Disney lead actress.
A subtle shift in the narrative began to emerge, almost imperceptible at first, like faint tremors before a major earthquake. Whispers, initially hushed and confined to industry circles, started to circulate with increasing frequency, hinting at underlying tensions brewing on the Snow White set. Rumors of friction, specifically between Rachel Zegler and her prominent co-star Gal Gadot, began to leak from the typically airtight walls of a major studio production. Insiders, speaking in hushed tones and off the record, alluded to creative differences, that ubiquitous Hollywood euphemism often deployed to mask deeper, more complex conflicts. In this instance, however, the phrase seemed to point towards genuine ideological and artistic clashes. Reports suggested fundamental disagreements over the film's intended tone. Should it be a lighthearted family adventure or something with darker, more contemporary undertones? Disputes also arose concerning the storyline itself, how closely it should adhere to the beloved source material, and crucially, the overall public messaging the film was meant to convey. Was this Snow White intended to be a faithful homage to the classic animation or a radical modern deconstruction?
People have real problems and no one gives a shit if she got paid for 17 instead of 18 on her multi-million-dollar salary, which is not calculated by the hour.
It rapidly became apparent that Rachel, along with other key creative figures involved, held vastly divergent visions for the project. These simmering behind-the-scenes disagreements, initially downplayed as typical creative friction inherent in any large-scale production, were on the precipice of erupting into the public sphere, snowballing into a controversy far more expansive and damaging than anyone within the studio apparatus could have possibly foreseen. And what was about to unfold in the harsh glare of the public eye would ultimately send shockwaves through Hollywood, leaving careers fractured and reputations severely tarnished.
So she just encapsulates everything that most of us cannot stand about modern day feminism and the left in general.
The meticulously crafted fairytale perfect public image of the Snow White production, and indeed of Rachel Zegler herself, abruptly shattered into a million pieces with a series of ill-fated interviews and seemingly unguarded social media pronouncements originating directly from the actress. In these public appearances, Rachel voiced a series of opinions and critiques regarding the original animated Snow White film that a significant portion of the fan base found deeply, well, to put it mildly, disenchanting. She openly questioned the foundational elements of the classic love story, going so far as to controversially describe the iconic Prince Charming figure as a stalker, a characterization that immediately sparked ire amongst traditionalists. Furthermore, she appeared to dismiss the enduring, time-honored themes woven into the fabric of the original narrative, alluding to a more aggressively modern and overtly feminist interpretation that many loyalists felt fundamentally disregarded, even denigrated the inherent charm and sentimental value of the beloved source material. Her words, amplified by the instantaneous reach of the internet, landed like a poisoned apple directly into the collective consciousness of fans who held the classic Disney film in deep, almost sacred reverence.
This weird feminist thing where her heroine cannot be in love or be saved by a man, the prince, that she's more focused on becoming the leader she was meant to be, as if women in modern day America must make that choice.
The ensuing backlash was not merely critical, it was immediate, visceral, and intensely personal. Social media platforms became virtual battlegrounds, erupting with a torrent of criticism, accusations of profound disrespect towards a cultural icon, and a palpable sense of betrayal from those who felt their cherished childhood memories were being carelessly dismantled, even mocked. The online firestorm ignited with breathtaking speed and ferocity, escalating from disgruntled comments to organized campaigns of protest, and Rachel Zegler found herself positioned squarely at the epicenter, seemingly either unaware or perhaps shockingly unconcerned about the escalating damage being inflicted upon her burgeoning career and public persona.
You cannot both be a leader as a female and fall in love and be rescued by a prince. Like, that's incongruous. That's only the left's version of what it means to be a strong woman or female empowerment.
When the live-action Snow White adaptation finally graced cinema screens, the stark reality was far removed from the anticipated box office coronation Disney had meticulously planned and confidently projected. Instead of a triumphant reign atop the box office charts, the film stumbled, faltered, and ultimately spectacularly underperformed. Reports began to surface with alarming speed, detailing dismal ticket sales figures, sparsely populated theaters, and a palpable sense that the film, despite its immense budget and star power, was simply failing to forge a meaningful connection with target audiences. Financially, the project rapidly morphed into a significant and undeniably embarrassing setback for the studio, with initial estimates of losses quickly ballooning into tens of millions of dollars, and some industry analysts suggesting the true financial hemorrhage could be even more profound. And in the notoriously results-driven ecosystem of Hollywood, financial failure often triggers a predictable and often ruthless chain reaction: the desperate search for a scapegoat. Almost instantaneously, the pervasive controversy surrounding Rachel Zegler's pre-release interviews and social media pronouncements ceased to be mere online chatter or public relations damage control fodder. It was now being directly and perhaps somewhat conveniently linked to the film's undeniable commercial failure. Then, adding another layer of chilling complexity to the unfolding drama, came the truly ominous rumors, hushed whispers of industry blacklisting. Credible sources deeply embedded within the Hollywood power structure began to suggest that major studios, including industry titans like Paramount and Legendary Pictures, were abruptly and decisively distancing themselves from Rachel Zegler. Projects that had been in development, potentially earmarked for her involvement, were allegedly quietly shelved. Existing offers, once seemingly solid, were reportedly withdrawn with little to no explanation. The sheer speed and almost clinical efficiency of Hollywood's reaction were breathtakingly swift and undeniably severe. It appeared that Rachel Zegler, who just months prior had been lauded as a luminous rising star, was now being rapidly reclassified as a professional liability, a reputational risk deemed simply too substantial for risk-averse studios to willingly shoulder.
So, I mean, this woman has clicked every box. And just for cherry on top at the end, she gave an interview last week talking about how they were basically a bunch of white supremacists on the set of West Side Story.
With the live-action Snow White project demonstrably floundering at the box office and a relentless barrage of overwhelmingly negative press continuing to mount, Disney, a corporation acutely sensitive to brand perception and bottom-line performance, executed a dramatic and decisive maneuver. In a move that sent shockwaves throughout Hollywood and beyond, they publicly announced the development of a new, entirely reimagined Snow White film, and in a headline-grabbing casting coup designed to instantly shift the narrative and regain public favor, they unveiled Jenna Ortega as their newly chosen Snow White. This wasn't merely a standard recasting, it was a calculated, strategic pivot of seismic proportions, a meticulously orchestrated act of public relations damage control. Jenna Ortega, already a bona fide Gen Z icon and recognized for her star turns in cultural phenomena like Wednesday and the resurgent Scream franchise, brought with her an entirely different brand of celebrity, a carefully cultivated public persona largely perceived as relatable, grounded, and crucially untainted by the kind of widespread public controversy that had enveloped Rachel Zegler. Disney's underlying message with this bold move was unmistakable, resonating with both industry insiders and the disillusioned fan base. They were decisively hitting the reset button on the entire Snow White narrative. This wasn't just about replacing an actress, it was a powerful symbolic statement, a statement aimed at signaling to their core audience that they were actively listening to the widespread discontent, that they were committed to embarking on a fresh start, and, most importantly, that they were determined to salvage what remained of their beloved fairy tale franchise while seemingly distancing themselves as far as possible from the negativity that had become inextricably linked to the previous iteration. The Ortega Overture, as it was quickly dubbed by industry commentators, unequivocally signaled a new chapter for the Snow White brand, and simultaneously a potentially devastating, career-altering inflection point for Rachel Zegler. But the lingering question hanging heavy in the Hollywood air remained. What did this undeniably dramatic shift genuinely signify for Rachel's future prospects in the industry, and what harsh, invaluable lessons was the entertainment capital about to glean from this very modern, very public fairy tale gone spectacularly and perhaps irrevocably wrong?
Where Steven Spielberg and co. were demanding that she prove how Latina she really is, since her name doesn't sound Latina, and she was angrily saying, did I have to bring in my little abuelita for you to believe that I was Latina?
The unfolding saga of Rachel Zegler and the ill-fated Snow White adaptation serves as a stark and sobering reminder of the often ruthless dynamics that govern the upper echelons of Hollywood. In an industry fundamentally and perhaps obsessively preoccupied with meticulously managed public image and consistently robust box office returns, even the faintest whiff of controversy can prove to be profoundly, even irreparably, career-damaging. Fan expectations, particularly when they coalesce around deeply cherished and culturally significant franchises, wield a surprisingly potent influence. And in the hyper-connected, instantaneously reactive landscape of the modern social media age, a single misjudged public statement, a carelessly worded interview, or an ill-advised social media post can ignite a wildfire of public outrage, a blaze that often proves virtually impossible to effectively contain or extinguish. For aspiring and established rising stars alike like Rachel Zegler, the underlying lesson is undeniably brutal and unflinching. Raw talent, however undeniable, is often demonstrably insufficient for sustained success. Expertly navigating the treacherous terrain of public relations, diligently managing fan perceptions, and rigidly adhering to the often unspoken yet ironclad rules of Hollywood decorum are now as critically essential, if not more so, than demonstrable acting prowess. As for Rachel Zegler's professional trajectory moving forward, the immediate future remains shrouded in considerable uncertainty. Could she orchestrate a career resurgence, a phoenix-like rise from the ashes of this very public setback? Perhaps by strategically pivoting towards independent film projects, demonstrating her acting range and commitment beyond the blinding glare of the Disney spotlight? Or is this, in the end, a stark cautionary tale? A tragic narrative of a once luminous career trajectory tragically derailed by a confluence of public controversy, perceived missteps, and the unforgiving machinery of Hollywood's image-conscious apparatus. The entire entertainment world is now watching with bated breath, industry insiders and casual observers alike, all collectively wondering, can Rachel Zegler effectively redeem her publicly tarnished image? Is a genuine Hollywood comeback even realistically achievable? Or has the metaphorical poisoned apple of controversy already inflicted a wound too deep to heal, casting a permanent shadow over what once appeared to be an exceptionally bright and seemingly limitless future?
That's her thanks to Steven Spielberg, who discovered her and made her. So she's an ingrate, she's annoying, and I think she's probably 2 and done.
The Snow White saga in its entirety stands as a complex and multifaceted tapestry woven from threads of ambition, widespread public backlash, and the dramatic, almost theatrical act of recasting. It is at its core a compelling narrative about the immense power of fan expectations in the modern media landscape, the inherent fragility of even the most carefully constructed Hollywood stardom, and the often swift and unforgiving consequences that can be unleashed by public controversy. Was Rachel Zegler ultimately and unfairly targeted, perhaps even scapegoated as a convenient explanation for a film arguably destined to falter from its inception? Or did her own public pronouncements and perceived missteps significantly contribute to her precipitous professional downfall? The definitive answers to these questions remain complex, nuanced, and perhaps still actively unfolding in the ever-evolving narrative of her career. The complete story of Rachel Zegler and the Snow White debacle is far from its final chapter. Indeed, much remains unwritten. Will there be a future redemption arc? A surprising twist of fate worthy of a classic fairy tale resolution? Or is this instead a chillingly modern Hollywood horror story, a stark and unsettling example of how rapidly and irrevocably dreams can transform into dust within the unforgiving machinery of the entertainment industry? Only the passage of time will ultimately reveal the definitive answer. But one thing is unequivocally certain in the immediate aftermath: this very public and very modern fairy tale deconstruction has indelibly marked the landscape of Hollywood, leaving behind a potent cautionary tale for aspiring stars and established studios alike. And the unwritten chapters of Rachel Zegler's career, now more than ever, are imbued with an undeniable sense of intrigue, uncertainty, and the lingering possibility of either a remarkable resurrection or a continued and perhaps permanent descent into the shadows of Hollywood's ever-shifting landscape.